We're go.
Hello and welcome to the next in the Effective Writing Center series of workshops. I'm Amy Maxfield, Lead Advisor for Training at the EWC. Today's workshop is titled How to Use Sources in a Paragraph and is being presented by Laura Deffley and Kevin Folliard with material prepared by Laura Deffley, Kevin Folliard, Amy Maxfield, and Dan Gallagher. Laura Deffley received a BA in English from the University of Illinois at Urbana-Champaign, where she studied literature, psychology, and gender studies. She continued her study of literature at the University of Maryland at College Park, where she earned an MA. Laura has worked at both of her alma maters as well as New York University. Since 2008, she has been an online writing advisor for the Effective Writing Center at University of Maryland University College. Kevin Folliard has been a writing advisor with UMUC's Effective Writing Center since 2010. He has a degree in English and creative writing from the University of Illinois in Champaign-Urbana, and he has also published sci-fi, fantasy, horror, and young adult fiction. Dan Gallagher is the director of the Effective Writing Center and also oversees LIBS 150, Introduction to Research. He's been with UMUC for over 7 years. Amy Maxfield is the EWC Lead Advisor for Training, and she also worked as an online writing advisor and guest lecturer from 2005 to 2010. She has a BA from the University of North Carolina, Greensboro, and MA degrees from the Shakespeare Institute at Stratford-upon-Avon and the University of Maryland, College Park. To ask a question during the broadcast, please use the chat feature in YouTube below the viewing window. This workshop will be archived for future viewing in the Effective Writing Center's Google Plus community. And now let's begin tonight's workshop. Over to you, Laura.
Thank you, Amy. As the title states, Kevin and I are going to be reviewing how to use sources in a paragraph. Before we get started, Kevin is going to go over why we need to cite sources in research papers. Take it, Kevin.
Thanks, Laura. Students need to cite sources in research papers to give credit where credit is due. If students found ideas or concepts from outside sources, they need to use the assigned citation style to point their audience to that source for further information. Also, it lets the audience know that the author of the paper did some research to learn more about the topic. Thus, it's not only the student's opinion. Rather, the information in the paper is based on other people's work, research, and ideas as well. If you're interested in going into a deep dive of academic honesty and integrity, please see our Google Hangout that was devoted to that topic, which is accessible via our YouTube channel. Back to you, Laura.
Thank you, Kevin, for that explanation. In this presentation, we are focusing on answering common student questions about how to cite sources in a paragraph. We're going to focus on the how-to in this presentation. I'll start with our first question. Which sentences get citations, which don't? Let's begin with what sentences get citations. Any sentence that contains ideas, theories, research, or information from outside sources should be cited. The idea is to give credit where credit is due to those who have come before you, who you are using to build your argument upon. You do not need to cite your own ideas on an issue that you have formed. Also, you do not need to cite commentary that you make directly after cited information. In addition, you do not need to cite common knowledge. We'll start with discussing your own words and commentary. Then we will tackle what constitutes common knowledge. An example of a sentence that must be in your own words is a thesis statement. You will take what you know of the topic and what you learned through research to create your own argument. Then you will present that information in your own words without a citation. As you can see on the slide, there is an example of a student taking a stance on college internship programs. Another instance of a sentence that does not require a citation is commentary on evidence. As you will see on the slide, the sentence containing a quote from the source has a citation because the text comes from an outside source. However, the following sentence that provides commentary and analysis does not require a citation because the student is using the information to further the argument being made in the paper. Common knowledge is not your personal knowledge before you started your research. In the context of academic writing, common knowledge is the same information repeatedly used in numerous sources about a subject that is not cited. Essentially, the information is considered commonly known on that subject within a specific discipline. For instance, your instructor may consider the basic vocabulary of a discipline that he or she teaches you at the beginning of the course to be common knowledge in order to help you understand the peer-reviewed journal articles written in that particular discipline. However, you need to pay attention to your instructor's directions. If the instructor wants you to cite all materials used in your paper, including those provided in your course modules, please follow the instructor's directions. In addition, if there is ever a doubt about whether to cite or not to cite, please cite to be on the safe side. Over to you, Kevin, for a question that we see a lot.
Thanks, Laura. Many students ask, what if the entire paragraph is based on one source? When possible, and when it is appropriate for the assignment, we recommend using a variety of sources within a body paragraph. Just because if you are using sources to support your idea will seem more valid and credible if you can show that several researchers agree with you, rather than just one. In addition, you'll be showing the reader that you've researched the topic thoroughly, rather than just reading one article or study. However, there will be times when your entire paragraph focuses on one source. In an article, summary, or analysis, or a literature review, for example, this situation is expected. Often, writers assume that if they mention or cite the source at the very beginning or very end of this kind of paragraph, that is enough. And it isn't. You need to give credit to your source every time you quote, summarize, or paraphrase it, and you'll likely have citations throughout the paragraph. This can result in a paragraph that appears to be cluttered with parenthetical citations, which can make it harder for a reader to follow and understand. It's important, therefore, to know how to handle this in a way that results in a smooth, readable paragraph that gives proper credit to its source. In a few minutes, I'll dive more into this topic of decluttering by discussing some strategies for achieving this smooth effect. However, before we do that, Laura will be answering another very common question about using the same source over and over again.
Thank you, Kevin. Students often wonder, what if I'm using one source for more than one paragraph in a row? Do I need to repeat that source? This is a situation that you might experience frequently, especially if you're examining a single work of literature or a particular research study, for example. As in all cases, your primary concern is in making it clear to your reader where you're borrowing the ideas of others and where you're putting forward your own analysis of those ideas. You should be able to do this in a way that your structured sentences and paragraphs. The first time that you mention the source, be sure to include the citation in whatever form is appropriate to your citation style. Beyond that, structure your sentences in such a way to signal to your reader where you are summarizing or paraphrasing, the source material, and where you are including your own analysis. Consider this example. As Callahan 2016 notes, advertising strategies have seen a substantial shift with the advent of mobile content consumption. She specifically delves into the uptick of smartphone adoption in the developing world. The numbers, as compiled by Callahan in Table 4.1, certainly argue for more attention to this demographic. What Callahan ignores, however, are the generational impacts of this shift, as will be discussed in the next section. To the reader, it should be evident what ideas are coming from the source and what ideas are your response, whether that be agreement or critique to the source. Now, Kevin will be tackling another very common question about quoting versus summarizing. Take it, Kevin.
Thanks, Laura. Our next question is, should I quote or summarize a source? Typically, you should strive to summarize sources because it demonstrates to your instructors that you have read and understood the material at such a high level that you are able to synthesize the source's ideas into your own words and phrases. Also, when the source's ideas are in your own words, it helps the paper to flow in a more natural way. Summarizing is similar to, but not exactly the same as, paraphrasing. When summarizing, you are usually condensing the main ideas of another person into a small amount of space. When paraphrasing, you are taking any idea, either a main idea or a specific detail, and putting that idea into your own words and phrases. When paraphrasing, you're not abbreviating the information. The amount of space to explain a specific idea remains about the same in your paper as it did in the original text, though there may be slightly less space devoted to the idea. However, when summarizing, the whole purpose is to shorten the main ideas as much as possible while still retaining their original meaning. You may paraphrase to simplify the explanation of information. With summarizing, the purpose is to convey the main ideas as succinctly as possible, with minimal explanation. Now, the important thing to remember is that instructors prefer summarizing and paraphrasing over quoting the majority of the time. That said, some instructors may require the use of a key quote. Thus, you should always pay attention to the directions of an assignment. Overall, it's better to summarize or paraphrase. Please remember to include a citation when summarizing and paraphrasing using the citation style that your instructor requires. Now it's over to Laura to discuss our next question about source placement. Go for it, Laura.
Thank you, Kevin. Our next question is, where should I place my source in the paragraph? Although the assignment type, field of study, and genre can affect the placement of research or information from a source in a body paragraph, in general, it is helpful to discuss research or evidence from sources in the middle or interior section of a paragraph. Common models for this method include claim, evidence analysis, and PI, point, information, explanation. Why do we recommend this method? Why not begin or end a paragraph with a quotation? Because body paragraphs are the author's opportunity to explain and prove the ideas in the paper. And as the author, you want your ideas to play the starring role in your paper. The audience should finish the paper remembering your analysis, ideas, and discussion. You're in control. If you begin a paragraph with your idea, then you've established that control. You're signaling that that paragraph is about your idea, your claim, your point. If you begin a paragraph with a quotation or a paraphrase from a source, then you're signaling that the paragraph is about another author's idea, claim, or point. Once you have communicated your idea at the beginning of the paragraph, then you can use information or evidence from other authors to support that claim. Finally, you can strengthen your idea by reminding the reader of how the evidence supports your claim. As you can see, the sample paragraph opens with the author's claim about soy milk, then uses sources to support this claim, and concludes with an analysis or explanation of how the research proves the claim. Now it's time for Kevin to tackle a comboing stumbling block quotations. Take it, Kevin.
Thank you, Laura. Many students wonder, should I use block quotations? Block quotes are large portions of text that you reproduce within your work. The definition of what constitutes a block quote can vary by style. In APA, for example, any quote of more than 40 words should be set off as a block quote. In MLA, any quote that occupies more than 4 lines of text is a block quote. Review your style to determine if your quoted material should be presented as a block and what the formatting requirements are for a block quote. But before you even do that, ask yourself if you need a block quote. Block quotes are very rarely actually necessary to your argument. Here are some things to consider before putting a big chunk of source material into your writing. 1. What is the author of my source saying here that I cannot effectively summarize or paraphrase? 2. What value does including this entire block of text add for my reader? 3. What impact does the inclusion of this block have that would not be achieved by pointing my reader to the source in my references list, works cited list, or bibliography? And 4, how disruptive is this block quote to my own voice and organization? There are certainly cases in which a block quote is justified. In a literary analysis, for example, it might be vital to capture the exact phrasing of an author in order to illustrate a point or explicate a theory. In the majority of cases, however, you'd be better served by explaining and analyzing your source material in your own words, with your own voice, through your own organizational structure. Now, Laura will discuss what to do if your instructor does require a block quotation.
Thanks, Kevin. Some students need to know the answer to this question. How do I format block quotations if I need to use them? If you need to use a block quotation because your instructor requires it, please look up the rules for formatting block quotations for your particular citation style. The example on this slide is an APA style, but other citation styles have their own requirements, which must be followed. In APA style, a phrase should lead into the quote that ends in a colon. Then the actual quote should be indented to the right. The parenthetical citation should appear after the punctuation mark in block quotes unlike when the parentheses should appear inside the punctuation mark when the quote is part of the sentence. As you can see, a block quote takes up a lot of space, which is why many instructors do not want students to use them. The space could be better used for paraphrasing and analysis of information to further the argument. However, if a block quote is required, every citation style has rules to help you with formatting. Now, Kevin will cover a topic that many students worry about. Take it, Kevin.
Thanks, Laura. Students often express concern over the amount of citations. Specifically, is it possible to cite too much? Well, no, not really. You always need to give credit to your sources, even if you have a citation in every sentence in a passage or paragraph. If you focus your writing on your own ideas rather than focusing on other authors' ideas, then you'll naturally have fewer citations. In addition, you can use stylistic tools to declutter your integration of sources, which will in turn keep the citations from interfering with your paper's readability. Although you need an in-text citation or a mention, like a signal phrase in every sentence that includes information from a source, you can vary the formatting so it's not parenthetical citation after parenthetical citation. Let's take a look at a cluttered passage, and then we'll look at an uncluttered one. As you can see, the readability is much improved in the second example because there are not multiple sets of parentheses to interrupt the reader. Also, keep in mind that in APA, if you cite the same source multiple times in the same paragraph, APA recommends that you only include the date in the first citation of that source in each paragraph. This writer has followed this rule by including the date in the first citation mention and omitting it in subsequent ones. Note that this rule starts over with each new paragraph, so if the writer decides to cite the source in a new paragraph later in the paper, she would need to cite the year in the first citation in that new paragraph. There are a variety of ways to use signal phrases to improve readability, as we've discussed, but again, it's important to remember that relying on your own ideas and using your own voice and your own analysis will also help to reduce clutter. But always remember, a cluttered paragraph with many parenthetical citations is still preferable to a paragraph that is lacking enough citations to properly credit the sources. Well, Laura, it looks like we did it. We got through the most common questions that students have about placing sources in paragraphs.
You are right, Kevin. We got through the most common questions right now. However, we want to know if our answers to these questions sparked new questions. Does anyone have any questions? If no one has any questions, please remember that you can always reach out to the EWC to ask for help with writing concerns and questions. Also, if you are interested in seeing the resources we used to create the presentation, here they are. Thank you for taking the time to watch our presentation. Please join our Google Plus group to receive information about upcoming presentations provided by the EWC. Also, please subscribe to our YouTube channel to view past presentations. As always, if you have any questions about the EWC, please email writingcenter@umuc.edu.